Hi Koonies, this is Koon. Welcome back to Koon's channel. Granblue Fantasy is going to be 6 years old soon. However, I feel that it is very narrow-minded and boring to see people talking about damage and weaponry whenever I look into YouTube. So today we are going to travel back to 5 years ago and look at the history of Granblue Fantasy. Together, we'll revisit some of the most memorable measures and implementations that changed this game forever. These changes are big enough to make players rage quit, good enough to bring you more quality of life, and tricky enough to make you grind more. History makes us who we are today, so take your popcorn, buckle your seatbelt, we will enjoy the show together. Let's go. In the beginning, when Granblue Fantasy was first launched, players were divided into several groups, something like Group A to Group G or even Group H. Until today, I'm still not too sure about the purpose of setting up these groups. Maybe Side Games was trying to reduce the burden of their servers because they didn't want players to go online at the same time, or maybe it was more special for players if you could only play something for once or twice a week. Because of these groups, players could only play quests like Angel Hello and Defense Order on certain days at a certain time, and you needed to follow their official Twitter very closely to make sure you don't miss any chance to play this quest. Sometimes you even had to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to play Defense Order just to find that the boss was dying quickly, and by the time you joined the battle, the boss was already dead. You can vividly imagine how tough it was to play Granblue Fantasy at that time. Thanks God, Side Games removed all these groups for good, and now we get to play Angel Hello all we want, just like Buffet. This is definitely one of the best improvements in terms of players' quality of life. I really hope they can bring back Defense Order in the future, but in a more accommodating way. Once upon a time, the Skydom was free from the corruption of gambling. There was no poker, jackpot or bingo, and everyone was leading a peaceful life. It was a wonderful age where people spent all their time facing pure guards, primal beasts, and monsters. But suddenly one day, an airship called Jewel Resort Casino appeared from nowhere. People started to gamble with greedy smiles. Everyone was dreaming to lay their fingers on Christina and of course Annette, which was once the most powerful wind primal beast in the Skydom. Due to the gameplay mechanisms, some risk-takers decided to use bots instead of relying on their pure luck. Saggy Ibex became a common sight on players' face. Cheating became a common norm just because of some tasteless chips and 777. To me, casino is the worst idea in Granblue Fantasy because it doesn't add any fun to the game. Instead, it exposes the ugly side of humanity, and the merge of bots destroys the balance of this game. The introduction of casino snatches away the quality time that should be used for story and personal progress. I understand one of the purposes of casino is to keep the gameplay experience refreshing. However, I seriously hope they could remove casino in the future because it is irrelevant to the overall gameplay. The guild war in Granblue Fantasy was very different 4 to 5 years ago. At that time, people were allowed to hold pending battles in their raid result page without a limit. This used to be a loophole because players could save up their honor points and pretended to be a harmless rabbit during a guild war. The scoreboard between two competitors couldn't reflect the real situation because of holding, so you couldn't gauge the capability of your opponent. The most despicable trick was to hold your pending battles until the last 1 or 2 hours of guild war and then unleash them to turn the tide. This is also the reason why we can only save up to 5 pending battles during most of the days and only 1 pending battle during a guild war. I believe this is a good change. 3 to 4 years ago, if you planned carefully enough, you were able to hit millions of damage with Sarunan, a guy who was punished to sit on the bench because of his too overpowered skill. It was the golden age of Amity Grid. As long as you had Sarunan and Zui, you were qualified to break every meta in the game. There was no such thing as off-element damage at that time, so you could use one single element to conquer everything in the game. Although it was very fun to have superpower within players' control, Cygames finally decided to put a soft cap on all these nuisances. And this is also why we have damage soft cap nowadays. In addition, to prevent players from sticking to one single element, on and off element damage was also introduced after the implementation of damage soft cap. In fact, this mechanism created a more wholesome gameplay experience, as players were forced to try out the potential of each element. But it also caused the gameplay to be more grindy because players have to spend time to build 6 weapon grids instead of 1. This new mechanism also killed the once almighty Grandy setup and caused a small portion of players to range quit. Grandy Summon and Grandy Weapon Grid used to be the most powerful setup in Granblue Fantasy. The mix and match feature allowed players to create a very innovative lineup using characters from different elements, but this is no longer feasible now due to the on and off element damage mechanism. I'm 50-50 on this change because it doesn't sound really favorable to creativity and innovation. However, the new Grandy Impossible Ray unexpectedly grants bonus damage to players who mix up characters from different elements. This could be a hint that Grandy may be great again. When you're limited, you want to break free. This is human nature, and so arcarum was introduced to help players to go beyond their limit. With arcarum summons and evokers, you could dish out more damage and create a more satisfying experience. However, as I have mentioned in my previous video, the design of arcarum is very tedious and boring. What's more, arcarum is time-gated, which means if you started this game 1 or 2 years later than other players, you wouldn't be able to surpass your senpais. Even if you're lucky enough to get prime match summons, you will still be falling behind if your senpai also has one. The passive bonuses of man or sub-summon also change the way how we pick out summons. I think we should be given a bigger room to make choices instead of restricted to several certain summons. As there are more and more summons and characters with man and sub-passive bonuses introduced, I hope the situation can be slowly improved and becomes more flexible in the future. The original gacha system Granblue Fantasy is very different from what we have nowadays. In the beginning, our gacha system looked very similar to the one in Azuland. Whenever you get an SSR character, the system would broadcast the result in a carousel list. A catastrophic incident landed on the gacha system in the year 2016 when Angela or Andila was first launched. A Japanese player streamed his live gacha video trying to draw Andila on Nico Nico during the Lag Fest. He drew for 2,276 times but was unable to get Andila. Soon after that, another player followed suit and drew the gacha for 2,522 times. However, he too was unable to get this character even though the appearance rate had been increased. They spent about 700,000 Japanese yen each, or 6,500 USD each at that time to complete this expensive and miserable fail. Skeptical, Japanese players joined hands to track gacha results and forwarded their complaints to the Consumer Affairs Agency to highlight this matter. This incident brought a revolutionary change to the gacha system of Granblue Fantasy, and very soon the gacha result carousel was removed, while new Spark system was added to serve as a safety net for all players. I believe this is the most meaningful change for Granblue Fantasy so far after 5 good years, because it not only helped to safeguard our interest but also makes the game more sustainable. So my lovely Koonies, what is the most important feature that changes your gameplay or brings impact to your real life? Don't forget to share with us your thought in the comment section below, because thousands of players from all over the world would love to see feedback from you. I personally think that there are still a lot of unexplored aspects in Granblue Fantasy, such as PvP arena, the emphasis of stats like defense and healing, or even mechanisms like hit rate. No one knows what is going to happen in 2020, but I'm very sure about one thing. My passion for games and content creation will go on and on. I will try my best to bring you more videos, more information and interesting stuff this year. So remember to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell. Know your game, know yourself, and play like a pro. This is Koon. I wish you a wonderful and healthy 2020. Ciao.